All right, Mr. NW, where's this one played out of? I don't know if you said you didn't want to give this up or.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
This hand is played at MGM Detroit. It's a 510 2K.
Oh wow! So this is a day. This excites me, Mr. NW. So a daytime 510 2K cap that kind of runs like 10 to 3 and then breaks ish.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean it's hard for me to get down there during the daytime, but if it runs during the night, then I'm absolutely down there on the Wednesdays.
I mean that's as I've said before, that's an absolute gold. I mean, I would suggest to you. I don't know how the game quality goes when it gets into the night because I don't know how many no limit pros there are up there that would toughen the game up. And in Detroit, I mean, I know that Terp himself, our PLO instructor, plays up there, and some other guys that I know that play PLO. But some of the best games that I ever played were daytime Hollywood Park games, which was a similar setup. It was 10 and a quarter, 2,500 cap. This one's a 2K cap, so it's 200 big blinds. But whenever you can find a higher stakes game with a cap on it, I actually think it's really good for the game. And the fact that it's like a 10 a.m. game makes me think that, man, during the day, the game must be juicy as hell. And meaning that when it breaks, if it breaks at 3 p.m., it's probably mostly recreational players. You know what I'm saying? Like the game's not going on longer. I don't know if that's the setup, but
it's like a morning live pro sets up the lineup, and it's sort of a semi-private to start, and then it sort of goes on list.
Okay.
Hard to get on originally, and I couldn't really get down there anyway because I work. And it's a very soft game.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so 510, and how deep are you here for the sand?
2K effective.
Oh, okay, so 2K effective. Okay.
Yeah, so we're playing 8-handed. It folds to me in the cutoff. Ace deuce diamonds out in the 30.
So Hero is in the cutoff with ace of diamonds, deuce of diamonds, and you open to 30?
Yeah, 30.
Yep, so like a 3x open. Is that somewhat standard?
Yeah, pretty standard. 3 big blind open.
Okay.
Yeah. So I open to 30. I get flatted, cold called by the button.
Okay.
And that's it. And then it blinds fold, so it's heads up.
So, I mean, that's a little bit of we always talk about this. Like in a 2-blind game, I mean, you will have some flat calls on the button. If you're starting to play 3 blinds, I mean, you're so incentivized to 3-bet to drive the people out in any type of ante or 3-blind game. This one's a little bit. I mean, I know that there are some calls probably cut off button at 200 big blinds to 3x, but I would, if I was not in the hand in a live format, I would kind of be a little bit interested to see like just cut off open button call. I mean, it's not the craziest thing in the world, but
yeah, it's just mostly going to depend on the rake. So because this is a rakeless game, you're seeing a lot of more polar 3-bets and a lot of flat calls just because the EV of calls just goes up a lot higher without any rake on the flop. So,
but do you think that the opponents understand that though? I mean, you might understand.
Well, absolutely not.
Okay. I mean, I would tend to think, oh, this is somewhat of a collapsed range because he called, like on the button. What you're saying is true for sure.
Yeah, it's sort of a regular guy who's in his mid-20s who will definitely have some fair amount of 3-bets. So.
Okay, so 30 in a call, no rake because it's time. So pot $75, right?
Yep.
Heads up, cutoff versus button. Okay. And by the way, too, of course, just like when you're dealing Mr. NW with a double flat, when you're dealing with a collapsed range here, this is again somewhat of a live hack. I mean, you can liberally. Here's the thing, like if I'm in Mr. NW's spot here or in a different situation where someone double flats, I will more liberally run a multi-street bluff in a certain situation because my opponent's range is collapsed. And a lot of times your opponents don't realize that they're actually supposed to call down way lighter in terms of like when they get to the end with like an MDF type of perspective, because their range is collapsed, they probably should be doing a whole lot of folding of top pairs, depending on what the board is. Just because like top pair can be some of the best hands that they ever have in a given situation. If a board comes out where the sets are especially represented almost always with a 3-bet pre from this, like if you are the one that called on the button and then all the sets like you would have 3-bet pre, then a lot of times like top pair is one of the best hands you're going to, end up with at the end. But a lot of players will under defend as the pot gets larger in real money.
For sure.
So, okay.
Cool. So, yeah. So the flop comes out. It's a queen of diamonds, 10 of clubs, 3 of spades.
Queen of diamonds, 10 of clubs, 3 of spades. So you kind of whiff here. You do have a backdoor diamond draw, and you also have a little bit of like a backdoor sort of wheelish type of holding. This is exactly what I'm talking about, by the way. I mean, not all three cards, but you would think the button's going to 3-bet off here with queens and tens, right? Now, could he have like some queen 10 suited? Sure, that's like 2 combos. Could he maybe have some king jack, even some king jack off? You might call with king jack off here in a no rake game in a certain situation. But the pairs holdings here, like, deuces, 4s through 8s, they're not really doing anything. I mean, they're going to sort of just be forced to fold off. So, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible board here to c-bet. And I think the way that I would approach this looking ahead is that a lot of low cards here are bricks. Sometimes people, like I'm talking about like any cards that are even like below a 7. So you could do some liberal double barreling anyways, even if you don't pick up the back door, where like the 10x portions of certain hands might just, kind of fold out. So I don't hate the flop, specifically because queens and tens are going to be 3-bet off so much.
Yeah, and like this guy isn't like a huge fish or anything, or else I would probably check a ton. Mm-hmm. But I'm still a fair amount of checks here out of position, so that's what I chose to do. I chose to check here
because you're trying to balance like your what you would. You mean because you would just check this board with a lot of your holdings? You mean?
I would, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I understand the theory. I mean, I can get on board with that. I mean, my only counter would be the hands that. I mean, I suppose you could just say you could just like delay c-bet. Delayed c-bet would be like if it just checks back, you just bet the turn.
Yeah, for sure. No, I would probably, with my combo, I would definitely mix it some c-betting here too, for sure. When just like pure check here. Yeah, I chose a check and position 30.
So button bet's 30 here. And I might kind of maybe seen where you might be going here with this one. If he's stabbing with some misses, I don't know if people would start betting like 7s, 8s, thinking that you might have, like ace, king, ace, jack. By the way, the Mr. NW with the, this kind of goes to show how balance can sometimes have power if you're betting and somebody's just folding out. But then when you're checking some hands that you're going to either check, call, or continue with, and then you force them to bet and you get the extra money, whether we do that with specifically with ace deuce, but if you did it with, your entire range and you had over pairs and things like that, the line does have some merit. Now, it's interesting because you wouldn't think that your hand is really strong enough necessarily to call if you don't think that the guy ever has like queen, queen, or 10, 10 and might just have a lot of stab folds. I suppose you could make a case here for making a play at it.
Yeah, no, and that's pretty much what I chose to do. I just figured that there was still going to be an over stabbing tendency here. And we could probably just get in, especially with this capped range, we could probably just get a ton of folds from putting pressure on this pretty condensed range. So I chose to check raise to 150.
So hero check raises. So raises to 150. So Mr. NW, it sounds like you might have been like, you're talking about balance in like these certain situations and studying these textures and to know enough that you're going to be checking this board a lot. I'm going to throw, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, I'm just going to throw out some scenarios here where if you were on the button, what hands would you continue with that are betting? And the thing that kind of pops out to me is that like if you had a hand on the button like 9-10 suited, 8-10 suited and flatted those, I guess number one, are you betting? And then if your opponent check raised you to 150, are you folding out that 10x portion of your range?
I mean, as always, it's going to be villain dependent for sure. If I know that we're going to be facing some check raises that's going to have some error and it's going to like very value condensed, I would certainly be continuing with a good amount of like board pairs, certainly top pair and second pair.
But if you had like an OMC that checked you and you bet like 9-10 suited, no backdoor, and he blasted for like a 5x check raise, you might fold.
Not fold.
Yeah. Okay.
Right into the muck.
Right. All right. So yeah, queen too, right? Like queen jack, something like that. Button bets 30, hero check raises here to 150. Okay.
Yeah. So I check raise 150 and, he thinks about it for a little bit and puts in the call.
So button calls. So now the pot here is 375. I mean, the reason why I asked you that is I was kind of trying to, get in like, what do you think his range here of bet calling is?
I get the feeling sometimes that he gets sort of fed up with me and likes to call down in certain spots. So,
But I think we can agree that he should never really have like 8s or 9s here or something like that, right?
yeah, I mean, I would much rather continue with some type of board interaction.
So the pot's 375, okay.
Yeah, pot's 375. Turn is the 5 of clubs.
5 of clubs. So you pick up a wheel draw, but it is on the backdoor clubs come in. I mean, you don't pick up a diamond, but you do pick up some equity here. And even before you go back to what I was talking about when I didn't know that you were necessarily going to check the flop, when I said, if you're betting here, I would do a lot of betting twice and I would consider like low cards bricks. And this one actually gives you some equity here as well. So, I mean, I imagine you have to have some check raise give ups here too, right? Like if a 9 were to come, something like some sort of like interaction in the middle here, you're not just always blasting off here on the turn.
No, for sure. I mean, especially with our combo, especially if we don't pick up some type of equity on the turn, I'm going to have a significant amount of like checks here on the turn.
What would you have done on a 6, by the way? Just because the reason why I say that 6 is because the 6 is a blank, but it doesn't give you backdoor equity.
Yeah, I would. I mean, it doesn't give me equity, but I'd probably continue to barrel here at some frequency.
And I assume the barrel's going to be large anyways if you're going to barrel, if you're setting this up, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds to me like you bet on the 5.
Yeah, I mean, I felt this was a perfect turn for me to continue, especially picking up the gut shot. So I went like full pot, 375.
All right. So hero goes, and that makes sense. 375. Okay.
Yeah. And, he thought about it for just a little bit and put in the call.
Button calls. So at this point, we would think. So I'm just trying to, and now the pot here is going to be at 750, so it's 1125. I'm just trying to think of the hands that call the check raise on the flop and now fold off on turn. I would imagine it has to, if he is calling with some like 10x to the check raise, that at some point, some of those hands that don't pick up the back door, some of those hands have to be folded out. King Jack off, which is still open-ended here with, an overcard to top pair. I would still probably continue here with that type of holding. I'm just trying to, and then, if he's going to call down here with Queen X, then, so I think that this gets some of the 10x here to fold.
Yeah. 10x, some like lower pocket pair, stuff like that.
All right. So now the pot is 1125. Okay.
Yeah. So 1125. And then the river is the 4 spades.
Oh, wow. So you back into it, huh?
Yeah. Back into the wheel.
So before you tell us what to do here, this always brings up an interesting point because you had started this off by saying like you were balanced or you're trying to be balanced with your flop play, right? That a lot of times in this configuration that you're checking, no matter what holding that you have. So I know that, obviously you understand about balance and being balanced in the spot. This is interesting though, moving to the river, because I find it like instead of now you've basically backed into the best hand, right? I mean, there's no logical way this guy's ever going to have 6-7. I mean, you have the nuts here. And people are like, the nuts is 6-7, the nuts is 6-2. Yes, I understand that. But for all intents and purposes here, Hero has the nuts by backing in to a wheel. My question to you is that if you had missed in the form of like, say, like a deuce coming, okay? I'm talking about like a miss that's a brick, like a 6 coming or a deuce coming. Board pairs are a little bit different because they close down the combos. Would you make the same bet size that you're going to make now for value, or do you kind of hack it and tend to size up a little bit more for value, especially on one of these ones? You go for gold on the backdoor side and maybe make like a more, I guess you could say like efficient, maybe possible bluff size, or sometimes even give up if you miss at the end.
Yeah, I think I would probably use the same size as value for sure. Again, it kind of just depends on like how much I respect the villain I'm playing against. So like if I would think he possibly would be able to tell that, if I jam here, that's probably for value. But if I bet like, 1,000 here, then, maybe I'm just trying to get it, sneak by with a bluff or a few $100 cheaper. So,
well, it's interesting you say that, because I always say that sometimes people in a spot where I think they're going to get called down a lot, I always say that sometimes you can take your bluffs and actually size down a little bit, and you get the same portions of the hands that you want to fold with that sizing. And sometimes people get curious when you go really, really large. So even though they might get like a worse, even though they might get a better price when you size down. I mean, the pot's 1125, and you guys have what you put in 525, 550, like what, 1400 left, something like that?
Yeah, 1445 behind.
1445 behind. I mean, so again, I just keep coming back to this. Like, yeah, I mean, in a case like this, like, you're going to bluff the same amount here as value. Like, are you just going to just blast all in? Because it sets up as a really good bluff hand, because the opponent, doesn't have queen, queen, and 10-10. And, the best hand that he could have here is 3-3, given the action. If he even calls with that pre-flop, then like queen 10 suited. But if he has a lot of like queen X here, like king, queen off, queen jack, do you think that that's going to defend down here for an all-in?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like seems like some of the best hands you can show up here is either like bottom set or like king queen. I mean, we block ace queen, we unblock missed clubs too. I think that's really kind of the question, is like, what do we think we can get like a good queen mix to fold here? And I think honestly, in this spot for sure. So if I were, say I didn't back into it here, I would certainly be jamming here, trying to get like, yeah, something like queen jack.
Right. But now that you don't want that hand to fold, do you bet something like 900 or 1,000? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, right. I'm probably just jamming it just to be greedy and trying to get it all.
Okay. I mean, if your opponent is prone to like making, a lot of curious calls in a given situation, or you think that he's just so strong that whatever he gets to here at the end is going to call anyways. I mean, your line is definitely strong. If your opponent has a queen, obviously he blocks you from having pocket queens, but you could have 3-3 or 10-10 also, played in this way. I just do find it interesting though that again, when I talk about like efficiency in a certain situation here live, that I still might use a little bit different sizes for what I want to accomplish. Like if I'm bluffing all in to try to get off a guy off a queen, do I want to move all in here when I would be bluffing to get him off of a queen to get a call? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I certainly think that's totally valid.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So you jammed?
Yeah, I jammed. I ripped it.
So hero jams all in. Okay.
So after,
did you get a call?
Yeah. So I mean, he tanked for about 2 minutes, and then eventually flicked him a call, and we were good. Obviously, against what I later found out was king queen.
King queen, and if this hand sounds somewhat familiar, we don't get the opportunity to do this. I didn't want to ruin it for you all. We had this hand called in from the other perspective. What, 2-3 weeks ago, Mr. NW, something like that? That's when you contacted me about this, because
showed me the video. I hadn't video until someone like pulled it up on their phone and showed me, and it was very funny. I thought it would be interesting to call it in from the other side.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we actually put it up as a best of video, or like as a YouTube video. I don't actually even remember off the top of I think I said that it was a very under bluff situation in a live type of format.
Yeah, you were saying that I was using RTA live. It was quite
yeah, right. Because of what ended up happening, and that's just because of the combo that you ended up having. But of course, it's nice to know. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? And what I was saying about RTAs is sometimes you can figure out when a guy's using RTAs, like when he finds like some sort of even way, way stranger than what you ended up with, like the slivers of hands that just don't make any intuitive sense that are supposed to start bluffing in a certain situation, like 4-5 suited, like without a backdoor, something like that. And then you look at the certain situation and that's done like 10-15% of the time, and it's non-intuitive.
I'm probably over bluffing that spot because there's tons of combos that I could use that would be slightly better, but I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if the guy thinks that you're capable of doing it, again, it's a very it's a very underbluffed spot. And I would still make the case that I know you're saying that you would go for it on a brick. It sounds like you would. It's still a very, very underbluffed spot. But I would even say, though, even against somebody who's trying to be very, very balanced, it still is hard to be balanced in this spot. And I still think it tends to be more value in a live format if from your villain's from the guy on the button's perspective, which sometimes makes me think, okay, I might overfold in this certain situation. And it all depends on maybe the comfort level of my opponent and the money. But it's an interesting one. It's a nice river for you.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for calling it in. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bart.